Good morning, everybody. We're glad to see you on this lovely, lovely day. It's just league type weather. We always get a wonderful crowd of people who come out on a rainy day. Anyway, we are so happy you are all here, and we know that you're all interested in the meeting that we're going to have. First of all, I want to thank the people who came to our wonderful luncheon, and to tell all of you it was a great success, and I hope you'll all join us next year. It was terrific, and it was lovely. I want to tell you about this flyer that's on the table about our trip to Albany, and I hope you will join us for that day. It's a very exciting day, May 29th, and it's out on the table. The other thing I want to tell you is about Nancy are you going to tell them about Women's Equality Day?
The agenda came up in his speech. The women went wild. They were surprised, and then they got into action. And in all my life, I've never seen such organization, such enthusiasm, and such good ideas. Now, this week on the Women's Equality Agenda web page is an ad. And there's also a terrific YouTube. It's towards the end. Why am I here? I am here to ask you to help beat this drum. This governor doesn't introduce legislation right away. He waits till he has consensus, and then, as he did with the Equal Marriage Act, he introduces it into the legislature. Now, there are 10 points, so that's a lot of legislation to be written, but we understand that the reproductive rights one is as we talk, is being written, that they're getting the words together, and what they want to do is bring it up to, it's not going to be a radical anything, but it will bring it up to what the federal guidelines are. There's also one on equal pay, on harassment, which never seems to end for women. Women are also discriminated against when they have the voucher for housing. A lot of landlords won't rent to them. Because I guess I don't want to have the to turn the voucher in to get the money, or maybe they think it won't. I don't know, but that's one of the 10 points. Also, pregnant women get a bad shake. The domestic abuse has to be tightened up because so many times we see that women are killed even though they have that order of protection. I am asking you to pester your state senator. I have a feeling they're not worried about the assembly, but your state senator, we need you to keep after them. If you can meet with them, that's terrific. If not, call them, email them, write to them, but we want to keep up this pressure and make our voices heard. This year, we hope, will be the year of equality for women, and I look forward to your helping us pass the bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. That's wonderful. I hope we'll all leave here imbued with the spirit of going home and writing a note, telephoning them, do something, because we could win. And it's so infrequent that we can say that to each other. We could win this year, so please.
I am told by Ashton Stewart, our executive director, that President Umane's colleagues are en route. It's raining. I think they're traveling by car, so they had some traffic problems, but they will be here shortly. But President Umane, Frederic Umane, Esquire, is an extremely gracious gentleman, and he said that he would be delighted to step up and begin a conversation before they even arrived. So I'm sure you realize, I'm sure you know, that President Umane is the current president of the commissioners of the New York City Board of Elections. They serve on a rotating basis, from what I know, and I've been monitoring personally. I'm Kate Doran, and I serve on your board here. And my portfolio has been to pay attention to election issues. And I turn up at almost all the commissioners' meetings, and I've noticed over the years that they do rotate the presidency. When I started, it was Commissioner Dent, who will be joining us soon, and then came J.C. Polanco, Republican from the Bronx, and last year it was Maria Guastella, who is the Democrat from Staten Island. So I want to tell you just a little bit about Mr. Umane, and I hope you'll fill in, because I want to emphasize that this is a man with a tremendous degree of experience, and I personally am grateful every time I see him sitting up there on that amongst those commissioners. He really wrangles them, and he provides the most civil discourse. Not to mention the fact that he's really easy to hear. All right, so President Umane has served as a commissioner since 1995. He is the Republican from Manhattan. He's going to tell you more about Republicans versus Democrats on the board. He was president of the board during the 2005 mayoral election, and he's been active in Manhattan politics for more than 20 years. He's an attorney, a partner in the law firm of Zeichner, is that how I say it? Yes. Elman and Krauss, and he heads the firm's transactional banking, corporate, and real estate group. He has substantial experience in bank regulatory matters and issues involving mortgage fraud, automobile, and hotel finances. And we know that he pays attention to the money at the Board of Elections. It's always refreshing to hear him talk about how money is being spent. He received his JD from Albany Law School. If you permit me a personal note here, my dad, who was a fine lawyer, also graduated from the Albany Law School, and a BA from Union University. He has a couple of children, and he's married to the lovely Susan Umane. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for having me here today. I'm supposed to be a good windbag, but can everybody hear me in the back? Okay. Thank you all for having me. Are any of you lawyers in this room? Okay. When I...
Fred, can you come around?
Sure. Yeah.
You can come closer.
Sure. Or I can perhaps even talk without this, but when I was leaving today, this morning, my wife said to me what lawyers normally tell witnesses before they're going to testify at depositions or at trial is to follow the KISS method, which is to, in this case, keep it simple and short, sweetheart. So that's the KISS. I'm going to talk a little bit about two issues today because I was told to keep it short. The first is to give you a little history of the Board of Elections and an understanding of its nature, which is a bipartisan nature. One of the things that we're being heavily criticized for now in the press is the fact that we are made up of Republicans and Democrats, and that we have to work together to accomplish elections, and which is no easy feat. The reason and the background of this was one of the great political reforms in this state in the 20th century, and it goes back to the very early 1900s. The Board of Elections used to be under the control of the mayor's office. So it was which some people may remember the name, Tammany Hall was in charge of the Board of Elections. So Tammany Hall picked who got jobs and who didn't, and more importantly, they were responsible for determining who won elections. I'd like to just take my glasses out for a second and read you a famous quote from a fine, upstanding politician. It is enough that people know that there was an election. The people who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. That's from Joseph Stalin. The real thing that keeps elections honest in New York State and in New York City is the fact that the Republicans watch the Democrats and the Democrats watch the Republicans. As a practical matter, probably 95, 97% of the things that we do are not political. It just has to go towards accomplishing holding good election events. There is a little bit that is political, and to that extent, one side watches the other. And it goes down throughout the agency. There's a Republican and a Democratic commissioner from each of the 5 boroughs, so that the full board are 10 of us. And there's a chief and deputy at each of the 5 borough offices. One is a Republican, one is a Democrat. And they're evenly divided among the 5 boroughs. So with the Bronx having 2 deputy chief clerks and no chief clerk. But it goes down all the way. And the best analogy that I use is in the mailroom, the Republican licks the right side of the envelope and the Democrat licks the left side, so that they're always watching. Each registration that comes in, if it's entered into the system by a Republican, it's quality controlled by a Democrat. Each of the machines that go out on Election Day, if it was set up and programmed by a Republican, is reviewed by a Democrat, and vice versa. So in each case, and everybody signs off on these things, so that there's a paper trail and an ability, if anybody was thinking of doing something that was untoward, there's a paper trail and we could figure it out. And practically speaking, there isn't so much of that that's going on. And at the board, I can tell you that there's none of it, because if there was, there would be headlines and all sorts of things. And there just isn't any of that stuff. And over the years that I've been there, and that just makes me seem older, but there are some changes that we've made to make things more transparent. We've provided more information over the years, and our annual reports are much better now than what they used to be. And we try and now get them done on time. We, as a statutory requirement, we are required to post an annual report every year, which talks about what we did in the past year. There's an issue now, we have some controversy with the mayor's office, because the mayor has something called a mayor's managerial report that he puts out about all the agencies. We have resisted providing information to that, and there's a big page that says Board of Elections, nothing, because it's just another area to show our independence from the executive. And we've had a good run, theoretically, of Republicans, mayors that have been in there. But New York is primarily still a Democratic city by registration. I, as a Republican, like to have a Republican mayor, but if I've been in when we've had Democratic mayors. And the idea is that you never know when you're going to be in or out. This way, there's always a check and balance to make sure that Joseph Stalin's words are not followed through on. The bipartisan nature is in the Constitution of the state of New York. It's in Article 2, Section 8, and it requires that the Board of Elections be bipartisan. So as a practical matter, it's going to be very hard to change that. And for those that advocate that, I just hope that you don't have the problem of having to see what you've, have your wish come true, because I think that it has the potential of leading to significant potential problems. This way, everything is above board, people are watching each other. And that comes up also in the context, particularly in this city, there are lots of democratic contests that go on between clubs and reformers and non-reformers. Republicans, we don't have enough people to fight. But among the Democrats, there are a lot and trying to get on the ballots, they have tremendous fights in primaries. Republicans tend not to, but this year we're going to have a good one for mayor. But the idea is that we watch out, and so in the Democratic primaries that are hardly fought, the organization people might have a feeling that they would want to support their organization people, but we're there to make sure that everything is on the up and up. So the bipartisan nature becomes really very important all the way down through what we do. And the lowest level of political space is the election district. And the election day workers, there's an even amount of Republicans and Democrats, and quite frankly, we have trouble finding enough Republicans to work on election day. But the whole system is geared so that even at the lowest level on election day, the Republicans are monitoring the election, and the Democrats are monitoring the election, and you would have the knowledge that nobody is trying to steal anything, because we won't let the Democrats do it, and the Democrats wouldn't let us do it, but we would never even think about doing it in the first place. But you never know about those other guys. The other, yes?
Why is it then that we don't have 100% voting? People are registered and they don't vote. Why not?
Well, I think the answer to that is there aren't enough members of this club. I'm certain that everybody within the sound of my voice goes and votes every year, because obviously you're interested in this. I too am interested in the process, and I vote, and my family votes, and I'm interested in the process. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here, nor would I. I can't tell you. I know sometimes it's hard and long, and people have to wait online, and we're working on that. And my compatriot who has just, my colleague who has just come, Julie Dent, is going to speak a little bit later about poll workers and our need for poll workers. We are working on that. We are constrained by the system. And, well, you see, the way the system works is that it's up to the candidates to do their advertising. We publish the election dates. We have a very elaborate website which has a tremendous amount of information on it, including...
Could we hold questions until...
Okay.
I mean, we are very much interested in your questions, and thank you.
Yeah, okay.
That was a good lead question. Don't forget. No, don't forget. Don't forget.
So the other thing that I was going to speak a little bit about today is our main legislative need. And our agency has very little actual say in the process of what goes on. Everything that we do is governed by statute and regulation. And we are really a mere ministerial agency. So we are constrained by what the election law and what the state board regulations are and what judicial decisions have come down. So there's lots of things that we would like to do, but we're not able to do. One of them is to have a larger, more readable ballot. We are constrained by the size of the paper. We are constrained by the number of languages that we need to have ballots. And we are also constrained by the limitations of our election day workers to try and understand the entire process. Some of you may know that another additional language has been added because of the Voting Rights Act in the last couple of years. In certain areas in Queens, we need to now print ballots in Bengali. That joins English, Spanish, Chinese, and Korean, so that we now have to try and fit the 5 languages on certain ballots. If you have a small ballot in Queens, you can't have a large ballot in Manhattan in terms of print, because that's not fair necessarily to the people in Queens. So everybody's got to have the same ballot. It may not have as many languages on it, but it's got to look the same. Obviously, there are different people running in Queens than in Manhattan in many cases, but the form of the ballot has to be the same. Otherwise, people would have equal protection arguments against us, and we'll get sued again. By the way, we're sued probably a couple of hundred times a year. So I'm not necessarily worried about getting sued, but we are trying to do the right thing. So we need to have a uniformity within the city so that people wouldn't be able to criticize us for something else. But we would all like to have larger print, and I took something from a candidate, and at one meeting said that we all agree that the print is too damn small, as opposed to the rent being too damn high. I gave him credit at the time, however. That's something. Our real major problem this year, besides that, which is now an ongoing problem since we've incorporated the new scanners and gone away from the lever machines that many of us grew up with, and personally I like better, but that's neither here nor there. This year, only in city elections in New York State, the top 3 offices, the mayor, controller, and public advocate, in the event that none of them get 40% of the vote in the primary, we have a runoff primary 2 weeks after the regular primary date. Quite frankly, we don't believe that we would be able to run an election 2 weeks after. In the old days, and I keep referring to the old days, with the lever machines, it was much easier. We could review all the information. We get it on election night, and then there's a recanvass where everything was checked, and we could tally it, and we would know who won pretty much before the paper was counted, so we would have a pretty good idea as to whether or not we would need to have a runoff. And quite frankly, we used to do a little trick. We used to set the machine up for a runoff anyway, just in case we needed it, and then all we would have to do was put strips in to be able to accommodate a runoff, and then we get the machines out again. We are required under the regulations governing the scanners to do a 3% audit at the end of the election process. All of that stuff takes time, and we don't have the time to do the turnaround. So we won't know necessarily until that audit is completed when, who and whether there would be a close enough race to have an audit. I'm sorry, to have a runoff primary based on that audit. We're not allowed to open up the paper ballots until at least a week after the election. So that takes time, and that's to permit absentee votes to come in, and you need to open those sort of en masse to be able to provide the anonymous ballot. So there's a whole host of regulations. Everybody likes to know who won on election night, but we often can't. There's a whole group of my colleagues now coming in, so let's let them all come in, and then I'll continue. Well, right now we're in what I call the humana phase. We don't really know what we're going to do. There is some legislation now to permit us to use the lever machines. A lot of people don't want that because they view the newer machines as a way of making improvements and reforming the old system. That's passed, I believe, the New York State Senate. I do not believe that that bill will pass the Assembly. That's just my guess. Many of the people who are sitting behind me, or some of them, are going to be going up to Albany on May 21st for Legislative Education Day, or what we call Lobby Day, where we're going to individually speak to the chairs of the Election Law Committee and the representative of the governor. We hold a luncheon for the New York City delegation up there, and we try and make the points that we need help with the size and format of the ballot, as we talked about, and this year, most importantly, help regarding the runoff. Now, the State Board of Elections is saying that in terms of, what I didn't talk about was the prep work to get the scanners ready for the election. Under normal circumstances, we have to run each ballot form at each poll site through each scanner 450 times, and they're pre-marked randomly to check each scanner to make sure that it tallies the vote correctly. That's a process that we have to go through. In some of the larger districts, it takes hours and hours and hours to run through each of the scanners. So we are not sure when we're going to be able to determine whether it needs to be a runoff primary. Once we've done that, we then know who the candidates are. We have to reset the machines and rerun the ballots through each of the scanners to put them across the city. And the timing on each one, as I say, takes hours. And it's normally a 2 or 3 week process just to run the tests through. So now we have 1 week. Then once the 1 week is over, we do the 3% auditing, where each machine has to be reviewed, and 3% of all those machines have to be essentially hand counted and reviewed. Each day, time goes on, and we're trying to get all this done. And at the end of the 2 week period, we're supposed to be able to run a runoff primary. And as we've said, we don't think we can do it. And we've done, well, I've been at the board, we've done a lot of things. And we've come through 9/11, which some people forget was an election day. And we've rerun elections right after that. We've set tents up. We had this year Hurricane or Storm Sandy. We got through that. But we physically don't have enough time within that 2 week period to be able to do the runoff. So one of the suggestions, as I say, was to let us use the lever machines. An alternative is to add a week, which we're still not sure we can do, but would be at least give us more time. The problem with the extra week is it then cuts down on the regular candidates' campaigning time. Remember, I am not in politics. I'm only a ministerial administrator. Well, yeah, but somehow with the public financing, I bet they're going to spend it anyway. But so that's a real problem for us. And quite honestly, we don't have a solution that works. We're asking for the extra week. We may or may not get it. I think it runs into some Jewish holidays as well, the extra week, and that becomes a problem for many of New Yorkers. So there's no really easy way out of this. And before I sit down, I'm going to ask any of you if you have a solution to our problem. Some of the people behind me are working towards some of those solutions, but it's really a problem. And yes.
Are there enough lever machines to be used?
Yes.
We've been told that lever machines no longer have, if they're broken, they can't be replaced, that there are no things for them to replace them.
Yeah, well, I don't know if anybody on this side of the room has told you that. And I'm not suggesting that. We've done a survey. Some of us, including me, thought it was a good idea to keep them around. Others wanted to use it for landfill. But we are still storing them. Each one has a packet of supplies with them, and we've done a survey, and it might work. There are significant issues. Some of them are political issues that come to play. One of the main reasons under the Help America Vote Act, which was the federal legislation that came out of the 2000 election, was that the idea was for people who have handicaps and who are disabled be able to vote in the same way that everybody else does. So for a number of years, we've had special ballot marking devices for people who are disabled to be able to let them vote. But their ballot came out as a paper ballot, and they were not able to vote theoretically by themselves with the lever machines. So that's the main reason why we've had to split off. Today, people with those disabilities still use the same ballot marking device gadget in order to cast their ballot, but then that ballot can be then voted through the scanner in the same way that everybody else is. So that's the problem, and we cannot use, by federal law, the lever machines in a federal election. But this is a city election, so theoretically, that would be a possibility. Yes?
What was the problem with moving the primary to June?
That's a political issue. Oh, sorry. The question was, what about moving the primary to June? That's a political question. And I keep knocking politics and the politicians. Before I came here today, I was looking up some jokes to be able to tell you. So one of the jokes on politics is if you break up politics, it breaks into poly, which means many, and ticks, which are blood-sucking insects. That was one of the jokes I saw on the internet. But so I can knock politicians. Usually when I speak, I knock lawyers, but there's some lawyers here, so that's why I asked. I have to knock the politicians. It's a political issue. It has to do with time for people to do their campaigning and people not wanting to have to, because it moves the whole process up. If you have a June primary, you have petitioning that may have started in April. And so April has now come and gone. This year in particular for the city council races, as you may know, we have redistricting. So the districts have now been developed and devised, but we're still waiting for federal approval because 3 of New York counties are subject to the Voting Rights Act and need to be approved by the Justice Department. So we are waiting for that final approval. It might have been too tough because the city council, I guess only 3 or 4 weeks ago, came out with those numbers. It's been submitted to justice, and it would have been too early this year to start the petition process unless the legislature decided, or in this case it might be the city council decided that they wanted to reduce the petition period. The city council has already this year reduced the number of petition signatures that people traditionally needed to make.
Commissioner, can I ask to introduce your colleagues here?
Oh, sure.
Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Do you mind, or would you like me to do the introductions, or would you like to do it?
No, you can do it.
I'll be glad to. We'd love to hold. We want questions. We want a lively question and answer. Oh, sorry. We want a lively question and answer session, but I would like to introduce the others who've joined President Umane, and Commissioner Dent has some prepared remarks, and then then there'll be an ample time, right?
Sure.
And of course, if you have anything more that you'd like to say.
No. So
okay.
I would just like to end by saying I am going to ask for your solutions to that problem at the end of this. So put your thinking caps on and try and help.
That's the solution to the primary versus the runoff, right?
Right.
Right. Okay. So we're joined by distinguished members of the Board of Elections of the City of New York. Also in red here is Commissioner Dent, and she is our Democrat from Kings County, also known as Brooklyn. And she was the president. She was the president serving when I started to pay attention to the board, and that was in 2010. And she is a very gracious woman. I tell you, she distinguishes herself at every meeting by introducing herself in a clear voice, and then she says, "Welcome, everyone." And she may not think that it matters, but I really always enjoy hearing that. Anyhow, Julie Dent was appointed to the board in 2007. She is a community activist, counselor, and teacher. I hope this is still accurate. The executive and educational director of the Audrey Johnson Learning Center, and she chairs the local community board where the preschool is located. She's a former executive board member of School Board District 32, former vice chair on the advisory board of the Woodhull Hospital, and has collaborated with the New York City Police Department and Citizens Committee of New York to engage youth in responding to the needs of the elderly in the community. We have to get you to be a league member. Ms. Dent is listed in Who's Who in American Education and Who's Who of American Women. She's been honored by the Professional Association of Daycare Directors, New York City Council, and the Federation of Protestant Welfare Incorporated. She has a master's degree with honors in education from City College, bachelor's degree from Empire State College, associate's degree from the Borough of Manhattan Community College, proud mother of Christopher, who serves as a New York City police officer, right? So, all right. Now, thank you. We have Beth Fossella, whom I was told when I started to monitor the board is a great friend to the league, and I found that to be true. We have Steve Ferguson. Oh, I beg your pardon. Beth manages registration. So you can direct your registration questions to Beth.
Can they stand up so we can see what...
Oh, thank you. Beth Fossella. This is Steve Ferguson. He is MIS director. And John Naudus, whom we've all gotten to know. I don't know your exact title, Mr. Naudus.
Director of the Electronic Voting Systems.
Okay, so he's the Director of Electronic Voting Systems. So the scanner questions would go to Mr. Naudus. And Debbie Leibel, right? Am I saying it correctly? Yes. Brand new Election Day coordinator. So, and Steve Thompson, who has been, I would say, point person for Election Day operations for the last couple of years, and really behind the scenes done a marvelous job. And taking photos over there is Valerie Vasquez. I think we all know Valerie. She's the Director of Communications. So, can I ask you?
Good afternoon, everyone. And I bring you greetings from the New York City Board of Elections. And going behind our president, Umane, I'll do the best I can because he is excellent, he's wonderful, and he's been with the board for many, many years. I prepared a speech because I'm not as good as he is to remember all of those details. He did a marvelous job. But anyway, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting me here. My name is Julie Dent, and I'm the Democrat Commissioner for Kings County. It is my honor to join you today and participate in this wonderful forum. I would like to take a moment to highlight some of the advances the Board of Elections in the City of New York has made to make the overall voting experience a positive one. Foremost in my mind is the importance of public education. As a commissioner, and also an educator, I know how critical our outreach campaign is. I am proud of the dedicated staff of the New York City Board of Elections and the poll workers that have crossed through the city of New York, taking the poll site voting education system to the New Yorkers. These demonstrations provide New Yorkers an opportunity, hands-on time with the voting system, so that they are comfortable prior to entering their poll sites in advance of Election Day. In addition to these events, each borough office has a dedicated learning center staffed from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. to allow for a demonstration of the voting system with bipartisan, knowledgeable staff present. There have also been numerous technological advancements which directly improve the voter experience. The complete redesign of the board's website is one of many steps that we have taken to prepare and educate the New York City voters about the voting system. The New York City Board of Elections website's new look and functionality will help New York City voters more easily navigate all of our resources and tools. There is an exciting update that will allow voters to educate and empower themselves about voting in New York City. The main page of the relaunched website features tools and resources working towards the board's priorities, including public education on voting the new way, poll site locators and sample ballots, as well as information on voter registration, poll workers recruitment, and absentee voting. The website also features sections devoted to specific audiences such as voters, candidates, and poll workers. With the click of a mouse, users will also be able to translate the entire New York City Board of Elections website to Spanish, Chinese, Russian, Korean, or Bengali. Enlarge their text and share the entire website with a friend. The website also highlights the board's social media pages and allows for readers to sign up for email updates from the Board of Elections. I ask anyone and everyone who hasn't please sign up and use this technology. We also launched the New York City Board of Elections poll site app to help voters find their poll site quickly and easily. This is the first model app released by the board in an effort to make election information accessible to voters. This app release is part of a greater initiative for us to empower communication between the Board of Elections and the New York City voters on Election Day. Now, we can provide up-to-date poll site information and alert to voters wherever they are. The board is proud to announce its development of the New York City Board of Elections poll site app for Apple, the Android, BlackBerry, and Windows. The app is friendly and interface which allows voters to easily find poll site information, map directions from any New York City resident address to their poll site, check for the upcoming elections, view, share sample ballots, stay updated and alert with what's going on at the New York City Board of Elections. Lastly, I also encourage everyone to use the newly designed poll worker portal. And the website number for that is www, and these are lowercase, dot, uppercase E, lowercase LECTION, uppercase D, lowercase AY, uppercase W, lowercase ORKER.com. And basically it's saying www.electiondayworker.com. This will allow potential poll workers to sign up and complete their poll workers application online. I truly thank you so very much for allowing me to address you, and as always, we look forward to continued participation to improve the voter experience for the city's 4.5 million registered voters. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. So, President Umane, did you want to make any other remarks before we open up the judge to the Q&A?
Yeah,
just one other thing? Okay.
Just wanted to ask your help in one thing. One of our big problems is trying to recruit Election Day workers. The theory is that they all come from the political parties, and probably less than a half now actually come just out of the political organizations. We get a lot of people through the schools and universities in New York City, and we get a lot of people from organizations such as the League of Women Voters. So if you know or yourselves would like to work on Election Day, the ability for us to recruit and train competent people will be the single best thing to try and reduce the lines on Election Day. And we're trying to, let me just finish my pitch. We're trying diligently to improve the training programs that people go through. The problem that we face, again, is we could go on, as I have, much too long. And in terms of training, our classes are now 6 hours. Nobody really wants to sit for a 6-hour class. We know that. The problem is that there's a lot that needs to be covered, and we're trying to condense it, but for first-time people who've not been through the process, and for many of the people who have been through the process for many years, because we switched to the scanners away from the lever machines, people aren't going to be, you know, it takes a long time to understand it. And in our programs, it's now all hands-on. Everybody gets to go and kick the machine and actually start it up and turn it off, and it's all part of the training programs now. But we need qualified people, and we need people who can alphabetize, and we need people, you're laughing, please don't laugh, it's tragic. And we need your help to try and get these people. So, and you can now do it as Commissioner Dent said online. So now I'm going to run and put my umbrella up.
Okay, well, Joan, you had a question. We're going to try to get to everybody. Marjorie, you're going to help me sort of wrangle the questions here?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joan.
My question is just sort of a twofold question. You talked about the BMD.
Can you? I'll repeat your question.
Here
you go. Go ahead.
With the BMD, what's the percentage of voters that actually use the BMD? Because I have worked at the polling sites for many years, and in my particular polling site, which is very large, I have never seen anyone use that machine. Do you know that number? And I haven't.
Do you want to repeat the question? We have to go to everybody. Joan asked, she says she's worked at poll sites, at large poll sites, and she never sees anybody use the ballot marking device, the BMD, and she's asking the commissioners to talk about what the percentage actually is of people who use those machines.
And I worked at one poll site, and there was one person that wanted to use that machine, and the machine did not function. She wasn't able to.
Nobody knows how to use it, but you mentioned
Right.
the BMD.
Yeah.
Using a machine, and I know it costs millions of
So
dollars.
Mr. Naudus will answer the question for us.
Thank you.
Well, the answer to the question is actually we don't know, and it's by design. No, because it's by design. One of the things that we strive at the Board of Elections is actually not knowing how individuals vote. We don't want to know how people vote. We don't want to know how individual groups vote. We try everything we can to mask everyone's vote together. So no one can say, oh, well, this is how this community group voted, or this is how this person individually voted. So we do what we can to not know the answer to that question. But with that said, in 08 and 09, when we had separate ballots, we used to use the lever machines, we had separate BMD machines, and those ballots were actually separately cast. It ended up being about less than 1% of the voters citywide. But since 2010, when all voters now use the same voting system so that no one knows how any individual group voted, we no longer have a record of how much any quote-unquote use the BMD.
Well, just in addition to that, is a lot of times that training program, a lot of times put into how the BMD works. We can't hear. And people aren't really using it. In the training class, a lot of time is put into learning how to use the BMD, and if it isn't being used, maybe that would be something that you could eliminate within the training class, taking so much time.
Okay, that was a statement rather than a question, so I'm gonna move on, all right? So let me just say, please, everybody has really good questions. Don't make a speech and don't make a statement. Ask your question. Okay, Barbara.
I realize there are legal problems with the counting of the vote, but don't you think that if they were a split shift, you would have twice as many people here, poll workers, than are currently? And don't you think that if the training could be switched so you're trained for a machine, you could learn it very well in 3 hours as opposed to having to learn all of them in 6 hours, and then you have an assignment when you work?
This is one of my favorite questions. I'm happy to repeat it. We're going to ask the representatives of the board why we can't have an implementation of the split shift for poll workers. The law does allow boards of elections to do that. And Barbara said she thinks that it would be, why aren't people trained to operate a certain machine, and then the training could be a little bit shorter. Who wants to take this one?
That's a good question. On election day, our agency, which is normally about 350 people, goes up to about 36,000 people. And those are the poll workers. And so if you double the number of poll workers, it comes up to 70,000 people. We're not sure. We have trouble recruiting the number that we need to have for a full day. We've done this on a trial for translators. And it was not successful because we couldn't recruit enough people, essentially double the people to work half shifts, and it just didn't work. We have as I say, it's a very long day. It starts at 5 o'clock in the morning, and while voting is open till 9, often the polls are not closed until usually 11 o'clock nowadays. And it's a very long day for a lot of people. It's just very hard to recruit them. And I will tell you also that we have about a 1/3 no-show. So we assign a whole bunch of poll workers to each and every poll site in each and every election district, the required number on election day. And believe it or not, and they'll back up with the numbers, but the rough number is 1/3 don't show. So the reason that we train everybody on everything is because if the people who were trained on a particular type of machine or function, and all of those are the people who don't show up, then it's another one of these humana because nobody knows how to open the machine, and the other guy knows how to close it but doesn't know how to open it or doesn't know how to work the book. So that's why we have to cross-train everybody for every purpose. And because we have lots of no-shows, people have to go and deal with nature's calling or eat during the course of the day. So people may have to switch to other functions while people are dealing with their own issues during the course of the day. So that's why everybody has to be cross-trained for everything. You know, if we had 100% attendance from the people who essentially volunteer as poll workers, because it's a long day, you're not paid very much, and in my view, it's essentially a volunteer job. But a lot of people don't show, and there's nothing we can do other than not pay them for not showing up. But that's why everybody's trained for everything.
Okay.
As a follow-up to that, have you considered that you go into a whole different pool of possibilities when you go into an 8-hour shift than when you have a 12-hour shift? Speaking personally, I've worked at it, a full day, and I'm not willing to do that anymore, but I certainly would be willing to do a half day, and I suspect you could get a lot more people here. So have you investigated what the population is out there that would do the job, which is very onerous, really, and very responsible, getting other people who won't or can't do a full 12-hour day or whatever it is that we're 16. I can't remember. I was so exhausted by the end of the day. I said,
I think would that be fair to say? Let's have a pilot project and see what
yeah,
happens?
I mean, just an investigation. Maybe take a few polling places around the city. I'm not really sure. I can't tell you how to run it, but to look into the possibility of whether you have a whole different group of people who would be willing to do that if it was 8 hours instead of 16.
Well, yeah, it is certainly something that we can look into. As I say, we did do a pilot program with translators, and it was not successful. I understand it's not the same. It's not the same. And it is something that we could look into trying to do, and maybe we will.
Evie?
I have a question about the size of the print. I just am absolutely amazed that persists. in effect, it's really violating the Voting Rights Act because it's discriminating against everyone who doesn't have 1010 vision. Why can't you simply have a different sheet for a different language, and to make it simple so no one gets it mixed up, have a different color for Korean and a different color for English and a different color, and have the print that a person with normal vision or with well-corrected vision can read. Otherwise, you're just, you're getting people, sometimes they can check boxes that they maybe not even be the boxes they want to check.
Thanks, Abby.
And better lighting, too.
Well, I spoke a little bit about the ballot size before, and we are trying to do it, to improve upon that, and that's clearly an issue, but we're essentially hamstrung by the legislation that's in effect now. It's possible to try and have additional ballots. One of the other things that we can do is to go on 2 pages, which some people like, some people don't like, and if you're on the second page, the politicians don't seem to like that. The other thing, as you suggest, possibly is having 5 or 6 different language ballots that could be used. Becomes a little, the issue then again comes down to the savviness and the ability of the poll worker now to manage in a primary what could be 10 different ballot styles and be able to figure out which one is which to give to people. And we have many people who, as I say, can't alphabetize. So the concern is that it becomes too much for some of the poll workers to handle. And again, we work on the minimal, sort of the minimum as opposed to the maximum capability of the poll workers.
If they're literate enough to be a poll worker, aren't they literate enough to see the word Chinese or Bengalese or whatever it is at the top of the page? And it's granted they couldn't be colorblind. I do recognize that problem. But you could just print at the top the language that it is. The person to whom it is given will certainly know if they're getting an English version or a Chinese version.